Greetings. Welcome to Speak Nerd and Enter.
So Mark looks at me and says, I can't go any further. I can't do it, Sean. And I said to him, Mr. Mark, I may not be able to carry it for you, but I can carry you. And then I tried to pick him up, and then I said, I can't carry you either, Mr. Mark. So.
No mas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the Dark Lord won. Who knew?
Yeah. So anyway, welcome, Speak Nerd and Enter. We were talking last time about movies and movies that were on what should be on the top 20 list, and we landed quite specifically in Mark's list on Lost in Space, and I think that's where we left off.
Yeah,
because the rest of us were shocked that it was even a movie.
And it was a Netflix show.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, it was.
A double whammy.
Yes, with Joey from Friends. And so I came up with a list of my own and read that off real quick. And Kelly and Rich, you were going to come up with a list for yours too,
Yes.
so that we could take a look at that. Do you have your lists, gentlemen? Let's see what you got there.
Yeah.
All right. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first, I guess. Let me pull up the
With
list.
the shaky cam. It's like watching the Bourne.
And there goes the video. You had to touch it.
I'm working on improving. Hold on.
If I had a nickel for every time I heard that.
Rich, stop touching it.
And, all right, you ready for these are my favorite 20. There's no particular order, and these are not the best movies I've ever seen. They're just my favorite movies.
Well, no, it's supposed to be the top 20 best movies, not.
It's too hard to fit 20 best movies. The
That's
original
a different
assignment
list. Your favorite versus best. No.
Let the man
To be fair,
see.
mine was a
assignment
favorite list.
Was pick your top 20. It did not
Top
say
20.
top 20 best movies. It's your top 20.
Top
Yours.
20, not
top 20 of all time.
Not comfort food. The best movies you've seen.
This will be
Top
the
20.
This will be
Not
the
top
episode where
20
the
most
podcast comes
comfortable.
to a fiery end.
Comes to
Yes.
a screeching halt.
No wonder your
Friendships were
list-
broken live.
No wonder your list sucks so bad, Mark.
All right. Well, in any case, I'm going to give you the list that I came up with, and you
Please.
can criticize it. So,
Please.
ready?
Yes.
All right. So, number one, Big Trouble in all of us share.
I could
No,
not.
I found that
heard
to be
something,
pedantic
but
and derivative.
I couldn't.
Okay. Number two, John Carpenter's The Thing, Number
Okay,
three,
there's a
Hawk the
ripoff of
Slayer.
Dune.
which
So
I know
far,
you
your
guys
entire
love.
list is pedantic and derivative of my list.
Number three, Hawk the Slayer. I know you guys will love it. Number four, Gladiator.
Oh,
number
see, that rips off Dune as well because that had people.
Everything rips off Dune.
And I think there was some sand in it as well.
we've come to consensus that everything rips off Dune.
That's
Yes.
right.
Number five, The Lord of the Rings, the entire series, because it's all just one movie broken into three parts.
I agree.
Number six, The Highlander. Number seven, which is one I'm surprised you guys haven't mentioned, the original Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Awesome movie. Number eight, Unforgiven. Number eight,
Let's put a pin in that one. We'll come back.
Okay. We can come back to it. We'll have a vast discussion on it. Number eight, Unforgiven. Number nine, Kelly's Heroes. Number 10,
all right. Kelly making a showing. All right.
Yes,
Nice.
he did. He makes
Right.
a
Well, do you mean
yes.
be Kelly's Heroes, or are you talking about the three of us?
I could be, well, there's four, but yeah, I guess it could be both. Number, and you would definitely be the Don Rickles character, Mark. No doubt. Number 10, Phantasm.
Damn.
Number 11, Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Both, you can make an argument for the original one from the 50s and the one that from the 2000s, which I really like.
Is that the
I
one
could,
with Matthew
but I
Broderick?
won't.
No, not that one. That's just Godzilla, and it shall not be spoken of.
Okay.
Is that the Let Them Fight one?
Yes. But King of the Monsters is the second one where you have all the monsters, not just Godzilla and his weirdo things.
Mm-hmm.
Number 12, Peter Jackson's King Kong, which I really enjoy. Number 13, Blazing Saddles.
Mhm.
Number 14, one that will stick in Sean's craw, Collateral. Number 15,
that's-
The Equalizer with Denzel Washington.
Really?
Yeah, I like that movie a lot. Number 16, The Iron Giant.
Mhm.
Number 17, as we discussed privately, one of Kevin Smith's stable, Dogma, but I could easily go with Chasing Amy on this one. Number 18, The Empire Strikes Back. Number 19, Secondhand Lions, which is one of my all-time favorite films. And number 20, Rob Roy with Liam Neeson. That's it.
And what's his face from Reservoir Dogs?
Correct. Yes. The little guy.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
Yep.
I can never remember. He was also in Pulp Fiction.
And the Hulk
Yes, and the Hulk. That's right.
as the Abomination. Yes.
Yeah. I can't remember his name. What was his name?
Ed Norton.
No, not at all.
Yeah, him and
All right,
Honey
Mark,
Bunny.
I think I fixed my camera issue. Hold on. All right, let's see.
I can't wait.
Yep.
Comes up looking like Millie Bobby Brown.
If only,
Quite an improvement.
if only I was so lucky. All right. It's
No,
thinking.
he's going to come back on without the overalls.
Yes, that would be awesome.
Just hair and a smile.
Nope. Maybe.
There
Maybe.
we go. There we go. That's better.
Whew. All right, that was an effort getting that unstuck in the compuur. But okay,
Well,
so that was my list.
All right. So now that glitch is over, give us your real list.
Yeah. Stop messing with us and give us your real list.
I can list it all again, but it probably
No.
won't.
No.
Probably
All
won't.
right,
turn
now
out.
I'm looking at the list. I think there's plenty of these that we all kind of agree with because they were on my list as well. Big Trouble in Little China and The Thing. So Hawk the Slayer. It's been so long since I've seen that one.
Yeah.
Like I saw it, and I was saying earlier, like there were so few movies that I would call like Dungeons and Dragons inspiration back then that I think a lot of us who played D&D were like anything that is in that vein. We tend to view a little more positively than objectively it might deserve. So, but it has been so long since I've seen that movie, I can't render an opinion based on like the facts of it. I just don't remember it being quite that good. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
remember it had Billy
Jack
Crystal
Palance.
and his buddies in it, and they were going to this ranch. And Jack Palance was the one who was taking them through like this cowboy drive.
Yeah, he's like, there's
Right.
one thing.
Crisis. Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, actually,
Oh.
that was better than I remember.
yeah, one like an Academy
You,
Award or something.
Yeah,
for.
yeah. You
That's
know
the
what? That
one,
was
right?
pretty good, actually.
You speak ill of things you just shouldn't have. It's the blasphemy is horrible. So the reason why I like that film so much, if you want to start out with that one, it is what for the reason that Mark outlined.
So
It was-
eloquently outlined.
Yes,
Yes.
It's the first movie that I saw as a boy that encapsulated the Dungeons and Dragons kind of role playing team, group party dynamic, and just the way it was done with the cheesy special effects. I mean, it was a Jim Henson production. They funded it out of England.
City
Sure.
Slickers?
No,
Yeah, you don't remember Gonzo was Jack Palance's right
He
hand
was.
man?
But as Mark said, it's not a good movie in terms of production value or anything like that.
In
It
terms
just resonates.
of acting or production or cinematography
Well, I mean,
or
it's
story.
Plot,
It resonates with me personally, just because
dialogue.
it was one that I would watch as a kid. That whenever it would come on, and I'd usually, living up north, it would come on Canadian TV quite frequently. I loved it. I thought it was great.
So what I'm getting from this is that you were poisoned consistently by Canadian TV.
Not really.
Because this is not the first time you've mentioned how much Canadian television you were forced to consume.
It wasn't forced; it was willing, but I enjoyed it.
Well,
They
the
plied him with
victim
maple
often
syrup.
doesn't know they're being victimized, and I think perhaps that's what's happened to you. Um, hmm.
Yeah,
See,
I would
your
almost
list.
put that movie Krull in the same vein. Like I remember
See,
seeing
that's
that,
the thing.
and you
Yeah.
were like, "Oh, this is so cool," because I was 13 and because I liked D&D, and there wasn't a
Yeah.
whole lot of things to kind of feed that. That like seeing this kind of fantasy sword and sorcery type movie, you were like, "Oh, this is awesome." Whereas I think watching it today, you were like, "Well, that's what we had,"
Yeah.
It's like
I love
growing up on
this.
science fiction. We had Star Trek and we had Battlestar Galactica, and then maybe if you were lucky, you had something else. But those were really the only science fiction shows on television. Maybe Doctor Who if you lived in the right spot or whatever. But I never saw Doctor Who growing up. But there just wasn't a lot of science fiction fare out there, let alone fantasy.
Yeah. See, the list that you have comes across to me like comfort food. It comes across like these are the ones that I like because they remind me of shepherd's pie, and I like to eat that and curl up and just enjoy the ride and that kind of thing. And I got nothing against that. But are they the best movies that you've seen?
I mean,
What would you?
wouldn't that be the criteria for a best movie? Is something that you actually want to watch again and again?
No, not at all. Some movies are so jarring because they're so good, so real, so difficult to consume that way. You understand the importance of them, the necessity of them, but you don't want to take that ride again because it's just too much. It can be that kind of thing too. So the best is the best of all those things. You get into it and it's an experience that afterwards you're like, wow, that was absolutely amazing.
Right,
I
but
can't do that again.
to
But
be fair to
it's
Rich,
amazing.
though, my list was not the best movies I've ever
I
seen.
know. Oh,
Mine
believe
was
me, I
more like
know.
these are some of my favorite movies
Yes.
for reasons.
Now,
Right.
Like
favorite,
I'm never
Which is-
gonna put Lost in
which is
Space
what-
with Joey as one of the best movies ever made, but
Which is
it
what I
was a
understood
good
the
time and I
assignment to
enjoyed
be.
it.
Yeah. I
I understood the assignment to be as Mark is saying. So
I think it's a bit subjective of, if I really like to watch a movie, like The Thing, okay? I mean, The Thing is very well made. It's a fantastic movie. Would I say it is an example of near perfect cinema? No.
see,
But
I would argue it could be on that list. And I would argue that it could effectively be on that list because, in spite of the low budget and all of that, you can't get a better dynamic and written dynamic
yeah,
and the acting of it. All of it, you can't get better than that in any other movie I've ever seen. A group of guys together having to interact in that situation, you could absolutely see that as being perfectly real. Their reactions, I mean, how they're dealing with it and how they're dealing with each other. I thought that was extremely well done because of that. Kind of like 12 Angry Men, same kind of thing. There's no real production value to it, nothing like that, but it's written so well and so intricately for those characters in there. It's undeniably one of the best. So I think you could argue for that there. I've told many people I think that's the ultimate guy movie, because
that's
of
what I
that
feel
fact.
about Conan the Barbarian. So
the Ultimate Guy movie?
I think it's one of the best the best man movies in existence. That and Secondhand Lions, which is also fantastic.
I don't know. I look at the assignment kind of how Rich and Mark look at it a bit, but there's also an element of when you ask the top 20, my brain instantly goes to the idea of, okay, well, what I put as the 20 of the best movies ever made. But I will sit here and look at my list and say, nah, I'm not sure if that would make the list if I really think hard on that, So I think there's an element of both. It has to be movies that you have to think are, at the top of their game. But even my list is populated in large part by things that, frankly, I just like watching.
Yeah, because going in, like I know there's a couple movies on my list that are absolutely not the best movies ever made. Like Bowfinger, I enjoy a lot, and it's a great movie. It's funny. It's not one of the best movies ever made. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a movie I thoroughly enjoy because of the actors in it, the subject matter, and I just think it's a really funny movie. It's not one of the best movies ever made, right? So that's a different list. There's some cross pollination, obviously, because I think The Thing does belong on that list.
Sure.
Obviously so.
Sure.
And Unforgiven, and definitely not Hawk the Slayer.
On my list. So if you want to, put the pin in that, you've chewed the meat off of that bone, and move on to another one. Please be my guest.
Well,
Right,
as an example from my list, Sling Blade is not a movie I would put on just on a Saturday just to relax and have a good time. But was it one of the best movies I've ever seen? Yeah, absolutely. It spoke to me very much because of a lot of the stuff that as Kelly and I were growing up, a lot of the stuff that we saw and we were exposed to, and I thought it was very, very well written and very well done that way. So
Sure.
that's what I mean by a movie that is not that comfort food, but is undeniably impactful. So that's what I was talking about. Now, if you're talking about favorites that way, popcorn, just sit back and enjoy it kind of thing, that's a different list. There, like you said, Mark, there will be some crossover. There's always a few that are Lord of the Rings, for example. You can put that on in the background and just, enjoy your day. But there's a lot that are going to be different. I'm not going to sit there and have, Taxi Driver. Well, I might. Taxi Driver on.
Walk in here.
Just the last, like 10 minutes of that and play it on a loop. But yeah, that's a different list. Dr. Strangelove, I would have on both those lists, as an example. What else about Rich's list? What do you think?
Well, I think Gladiator is a strong choice. Like that could have made my list, but it didn't. But like I said, that's one of those ones like, yeah, that was a really, really good, solid movie. Like I enjoyed it. I can't think of a negative about that movie that would keep it off a list like that. I love all the actors and I loved all the action. That was just a very well done movie.
If it had been placed in space and done with Joey from Friends.
Oh, it would be the top of my list. Oh my God.
The number one.
The number one.
And I have an honorable mention as well that I forgot. Gangs of New York is another one.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Beyond this list, but it kind of got moved around a little bit.
No, Gangs of New York was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and number 6 you have Highlander. I loved it back then. Yeah. I just remember the last time I watched it going, wow, it was kind of slow and kind of like not as good as I remember. I don't think it's aged well. And it's one of those cases where I'm honestly looking forward to the remake and going, man, I hope they do what they did for the 1950s Thing when John Carpenter took that idea and made The Thing, which is now the best one, or what you took with Alien and made with Aliens for me to trigger Sean.
Well, as far as the original Thing from Another World and The Thing, we're in the same sort of timeline, about 30, 40 years in between the films. So, it's definitely possible. The effects can definitely be improved. I'll give it that.
The sword fighting can be improved. In the same way, look at Star Wars A New Hope versus the prequels. Like, that's one thing I've always said that Lucas got 100% right, is instead of a couple old men banging sticks at each other, like the lightsaber duels just got so elevated that you were like, this is awesome. Whereas if you go look at the original, it's a couple dudes poking each other with sticks versus what, Ray Park and whatnot. You're like, okay, this is cool. So I could definitely see.
Not to insult the original New Hope sword fighting, because one of the greatest film sword masters who ever lived taught those guys. It wasn't the sword fighting per se. It was the ability of the guys that were actually doing it.
No, I would say it was.
You mean the 20-something Luke Skywalker and the guy in a mask who could have been anybody, right?
See, I will argue it this way, because if you don't have the Force and all you're doing is fencing, then okay, yeah, the more realistic and more acceptable one would be the cautious, realistic kind of, testing defenses and all of that they had in the first one. That would be a more realistic presentation. However, if you have access to the Force and you're able to get those premonitions of this, I'm going to be able to do. I need to go here and do. Then you have all kinds of options.
I don't think
Not
it was
to mention
developed
the
that far.
reflexes being. What's that?
I don't think the Force was developed that far.
Right. We know it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I saw a thing about Star Wars actually just earlier this morning, where they were talking about the original swords were really heavy in Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. They were so heavy you had to hold them with like two hands, and they were covered in this material that was reflective. It was like the movie screen material, so they'd shine a light on it and it would glow, and they'd add in like the colors later. But again, there's only so much you can do if it's really heavy and you have to hold it with two hands, and you have to have the angle just right, because if it got out of the wrong angle, it would stop glowing. So like there were some technical limitations that I completely understand, and they did what they could do for.
I fault them for
the
not
time.
having real lightsabers.
Yeah, they should have waited for the technology to mature.
Right.
Should have caught up.
Right. But the ones we have now, like they actually have their own light source, and they're and you can fight with them, and like the things they can do now with lightsabers are amazing. But again, going back to Highlander, they're just swords. There's not magic. There's not the Force. It's a couple of dudes fighting with swords that you need to cut someone's head off with, which is going to dictate the type of sword.
I'd say pretty good choreography as well in Highlander. If you want to look at that, like comparative to New Hope, the choreography in Highlander is actually pretty good. At least on par with any other good sword fighting movie. I see your point, Sean. Because I'm thinking particularly about the Alec Guinness, David Prowse, sword fight at the end of A New Hope, and you can tell Alec Guinness is kind of. He's having a hard time,
Yeah.
And I see your point there, but at the same time, back in 1977, I didn't care. I thought laser swords.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's got to be an element of that's where we're talking about movies that we like. You're going to suspend some criticisms and some issues. If we take a step back here all these years later, sure, we can pick it apart.
Yeah.
But when you're a young person watching, something that hasn't been done on the screen before, it was just mesmerizing. And so there's an element that has to be given to that. I will always fault Highlander, and I haven't watched it in ages. I will always fault Highlander on the ending. Just the idea that after going through beheading all those people, what it allows you to do is help leaders understand one another better. It is the most
dumb.
I mean, that was bad even by M. Night Shyamalan standards.
No, I mean, that part of the writing, like they didn't know what to do with the prize. The prize was they didn't understand. Like I don't even think they were really good on the lead up
movie.
Let's start with calling it the prize.
Well, I mean,
the prize is something you get at the carnival, not for beheading 300 people.
It's a simple term for a big concept, but the idea that you're turned back from immortal to mortal. I mean, if you think about it, Connor McLeod wasn't immortal for very long. The Kurgan was immortal for about 1,000 years.
Hello.
Yeah, I don't. It's a spam call. My bad.
We know.
I know you know.
It's become
and
a call-in show.
I'll pay for it later. The Kurgan
Caller number one, you're on the air. Well, yes, I am interested in saving money on my car insurance.
And I like Highlander.
Yeah, I don't know anyone in the 725 area code. Anyway, the Kurgan and Ramirez, I mean, they were much older than Connor McLeod, and their immortality, I think, was more significant. He had only been around since the 1500s. I mean, 500 years? Yeah, that's a long time by human standards, but he's not since the Egyptian Empire like Ramirez, See,
but that's where I would feel ripped off. Okay, I only get to be immortal for 500 years, but somebody else got a couple thousand out of it. Now, to hell with that, man.
And all you got was essentially a universal GED. That's really it. You cut off the last dude's head, and here you go. That was that.
Like I said, this is one of those cases where the remake could be amazing. Now, I will say this. Given Hollywood's recent track record, I don't think it will be. I think there'll be parts of it that are like, I think the technical sword fighting, I think will be amazing. right? The
I don't
choreography
know,
and that kind,
man.
like it could be really, it could be awesome. Like Hollywood's gotten
It'd be
better
good,
at
but I mean,
staging fights, etc. But like I said, we have the tools to make it better and make it amazing and really deliver something. I'm not sure Hollywood has the will or necessarily even the know-how in a lot of cases
Now,
to
as you
deliver
say
something that is not a polluted mess.
Now, as you say that, Mark, the only thing I can think of is the $6 million man, because we have the technology, we have the knowledge. You
can't
was
rebuild
he
him.
really better? No, he was a disappointment. Even back
That's right.
with that.
That's
One
right.
arm
And
was
today
really
he would
good,
be the $18 trillion man and he wouldn't work.
Yeah.
You have to reboot constantly.
and they'd be laundering money through his project, and it would be
Yeah.
amazing. So, but in any case, I disagree with you. I think that the fencing in Highlander was actually very good, and improving that's just a subplot of the film. But what they really need to show in the film is the differences between the different cultures, right? That's between Asian sword play, European sword play, Egyptian sword play, all that sort of thing. So, and I thought they
Jedi.
captured that really well.
Yeah.
The one that I think, honestly, if you're going to talk about choreography and that sort of thing, I don't cut as much slack as you do because you had the one that really set the bar for choreography, which was, of course, Enter the Dragon. And that was years before any of that stuff. And yet, all the choreography for American cinema stayed the same, even after that movie and all that really did. I mean, that's what inspired me to get into the martial arts, was seeing that movie and
Highlander?
seeing Bruce Lee.
Oh.
No, Bruce
No,
Lee.
Enter the Dragon.
Yeah. Highlander almost made me not want to, but Bruce Lee was the one who.
So,
Well, Bruce. I mean,
brutal.
compare the two.
They're not the same thing, though. I mean, it's like comparing apples and oranges. I mean,
No, it
really.
shouldn't be. That's my point. It shouldn't be. So when you're talking about the fencing being good in there, no, but that's not the only one. Every one of them was not as good when they could have been. You had everything that was going on in the Asian markets with, choreography, and that was getting better and better as time went on. You had Enter the Dragon, which was, I think, a seminal point for choreography, but nobody really did anything with that until you actually had the prequels for Star Wars. And when you had the prequels for Star Wars and we saw that, we were like, this is what a Jedi should be.
Yeah, but
Bruce Lee threw on some robes and went out there and started force pushing people.
I
That's what it.
I agree with Rich that I think it's I don't know if I agree with the comparison in saying that it should be judged by the choreography in Enter the Dragon.
That you would agree with me. That's excellent.
Enter the Dragon. Enter the Dragon. I mean, your main actor in that film was a martial artist. In Highlander, you had actors who were being trained on how to be swordsmen, and I mean, they're not spending their entire life learning how to do a thing. And you're always going to be hamstrung on that issue, is that you've got actors who are trying to portray a thing, whether or not they're very good at it.
But you have a lot of. But the only reason I'm going to push back on that is because you have John Wick, you have the Bourne movies, you have all kinds of franchises now with people who are not martial artists, who go through the training to be able to do a choreographed part up to a certain standard, and they could have done that,
But John Wick and the Bourne Identity have a certain budget for special effects and things like that, where they can, there's a lot of film splicing to make some things look better than what they probably do in real life. Highlander was working on a budget of what it had, and Enter the Dragon, they spent most of their budget on buying a bunch of extras to stand around in gis and black belts while Bruce Lee kicked the crap out of somebody. I mean,
you're being very forgiving of those movies. You're
Well,
being very
a bit.
forgiving.
My
a
issue,
bit.
Sean,
For me, yes.
my issue is that you're comparing. Enter the Dragon comes from a long and storied, at least 20-year history of Asian action cinema,
Right.
which is not what a film like Highlander is. To compare them both, you're you're working with two completely different. It's like working with a fish and a camel. I mean, you've got two different
If
things.
that were so,
Which
if
one's
that
the
were
camel?
so, why would it be such a necessity for cinema now?
Because cinema has changed the way that it does things in that time.
Right, because they discovered that worked. It would have worked before, but they didn't do it.
But you know, I mean, but there's also this element, Sean, that we're butting up here. I mean, when we talk about Enter the Dragon, you know, it's largely driven by a different philosophy around how to tell the story. The American movie makers, by and large, are still at that time really crapping on anything Asian. They think that whatever they do is better than everything else. And so there's an element of, you know, the development in American cinema, it really comes from an evolution of who's actually in charge. And even in that regard, we're still seeing that American movie making is lagging in many ways compared to other global films. I think Highlander is just a product of its time. I mean, look, I'm still going to sit here and be critical of Highlander, but I can't criticize it saying, well, it's not Enter the Dragon. You
Well, I
know?
think you're missing an opportunity for criticism.
You know, you're just missing an opportunity to give me a hard time about one of my favorite movies. It's okay. It's all
And
right.
that's not like you, Kelly. Look, Highlander was one of my favorite movies too. I'm
Yeah.
like Mark. When I watched that at the time, it was cool. It was great. And I'm like Clancy Brown, that over the years,
Yeah.
I've looked at it and thought, you know,
Yeah,
concept's
it
cool.
didn't age as well. Like The Thing,
Yeah.
for the time it was made, and some of the effects are, you're like, you can see what they did there. Like when the dude's got his face eaten and he's like shaking this puppet around in the room and it's kicking the lights. Like you can tell that's a dude with a puppet shaking it around.
But
I
also,
can forgive it though. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, this was a movie made in the 80s and all the other stuff makes up for that. That is not I'm not complaining about that movie. I saw how they did what they did and I was like, okay, cool. Like, you know, it was like peeking behind the curtain and kind of, you know, you're like, oh, that's kind of cool, whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know how they did the rest of that stuff, but that's amazing. So, yeah, you know, I'm like I said, I don't want to be too critical, but it didn't, like, The Thing aged fine. I'd watch it right now.
the reason why
Highlander hasn't. And maybe
Well,
that's because nothing has come along to supplant The Thing, like the sword fighting from the prequels have come along and said, oh, here's what it could be. Go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know the reason it hasn't quite. I think the pacing is a little slow. I think the ending was a little anticlimactic. I think there's a couple little things that, like I said, I'm very hopeful for the remake, which I almost never say. You know what I mean?
So you
Normally
have
a remake
new
is
hope?
awful.
well,
I have a new hope for the prequel.
very clever,
I hope it strikes back.
and it'll be a great return of the Highlander. I think the reason why you're feeling that way about The Thing, Mark, is that The Thing is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. It truly is. And the Highlander is not one of the greatest films ever made. It's not. It's just a very enjoyable film for me. But The Thing, you know, John Carpenter's The Thing is timeless because it is, and the effects you're talking about, the practical effects that you're talking about hold up because they were so, like, I think Rob Bottin was the guy that did the practical. They were
Exactly.
spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah, just like that.
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's
My
that's
God.
exactly what we were saying. And I don't think you can top that because there's no way. Those effects were real. They used a lot of real material, a lot of real flesh.
They were
and
all
things
real.
like
It was
that.
all practical effects.
Well,
all of it.
except for the melted face, you know.
Well,
But
there was-
you know,
yeah,
what,
there was
you know what I'm
A
talking
couple
about.
of stop motions, yeah.
Right. Well,
Which movie
you
are we
know,
talking about now?
The Thing.
The Thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Highlander. We're still on that.
The melted face.
But the effects in The Thing, you can't top that in many cases because it was done with real stuff. Even in CG, you can't
No.
do that. You're still
saw
going to
that
see that it's
happen.
fake. Yeah, exactly.
We saw that with the attempted prequel thing, which was just it's a good film. They actually were supposed to use practical effects again in that one, and they went for digital for some reason, and they did not look anywhere
It's
near as
It's
good.
the enticing cop out.
Yeah. And there's like I remember when they were making the Star Wars prequels, there was a scene where Jango Fett grabs Obi-Wan and is like flying and dragging him across that rainy platform, as he's trying to escape. And they were on the fence about, okay, do we do this practically? Do we do this digitally? And cost was about the same. And they were, it was that weird time where do we do it practically versus can we do this digitally and have it look good? And it wasn't until that time that you could really make that decision. And unfortunately, the thing sequel came out after that, and so they were just like, oh, this is probably cheaper and easier to do, and I think the movie suffered for it because I like that movie, but it's not the original. You know what I'm saying?
Talking about Attack of the Clones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. That was it Attack of the Clones, that one? Yes, it was.
Yeah, when they were fighting on the ocean planet, right?
Yeah.
Camino.
Camino.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, like Highlander, I think it belongs on that list. I have no problem with it. I don't think it's aged well. I think we've beaten that horse to death, and you're just wrong, Rich. So
okay,
fine.
I agree. We gave you a hard time about Lost in Space, so I'll take it on the chin for that.
That's right. Yes, you goddamn right you will. Yeah.
We'll pick another one that you want to criticize.
Like I said, Conan the Barbarian. I don't want to beat this over the head. Like that was I'm in the 80s. There was only so many sword and sorcery type movies that you could watch. Right, Highlander, I'm going to put in that because it was all swordplay. Conan, of course, because it was Conan and it had Arnold Schwarzenegger and fond memories of it.
That is not why. Not why I like Conan the Barbarian. But that
you like big beefy men, do you?
No.
Beast Slayer was another.
The philosopher.
Yeah.
Beastmaster.
Beastmaster. Beast Slayer was the X.
Beast Slayer. Yeah. Fuck the Beast Slayer. Of
cat people.
There's one with the chick who was riding the zebra.
No, now to give you some context, that is not the reason. That is
you
not
remember
the
what
reason.
I'm talking about, Kelly?
Yes. Yeah. But that is not the reason why Conan the Barbarian is on the list. It has to do more with Milius's philosophy that he put into the movie. The whole idea of brotherhood and honor and revenge and the whole idea of the riddle of steel. All those things were what made that movie made my list. It had no
right
every time
that part of it.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. Well said. Yeah.
I take it all back. That's why it belongs on the list. Okay.
Did you not
convince me?
Did you? So where did I leave off that it cut out?
Pretty much
right around where you were saying brotherhood.
All the crap that you said that wasn't true.
All the important stuff.
The idea, the philosophy that was put into it about, like I said, brotherhood and fulfilling your oaths, the riddle of steel, all of those things. That is what I really enjoy about that film. It's not so much the production values of it, which I thought were good. Plus the performances from people like James Earl Jones, I thought were.
I just can't get over his wig, though. That's why it never makes my list.
It was quite the wig, yes.
It was an awful wig.
Yeah, he was supposed to be an Atlantean of all things, which is interesting. But that's the parts of the film that I really enjoy, like the whole revenge quest and that sort of thing. And as far as philosophy, like what you can trust, what you can't trust. Following your people, like taking care of your people, all of those things. That's what I really enjoy about the film. Not so much the sword and sorcery aspects of it, although they are great. But I thought it was a really good example of how to bring some of the things that were kind of ignored during that period. They were just looking at, these action movies, that's early 80s. So you're just getting into the big action movie genre, right? But it was, very much, I found the philosophy of Conan the Barbarian to be much more interesting than the action parts.
All
so
right.
that's why I like it.
Okay. Can't fault it. Okay.
What else?
Okay. Unforgiven, amazing movie.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly's Heroes. Let's talk about that one. It's been so long since I've seen that one. That was the World War II misfits. We're gonna go steal a tank or go steal some Nazi gold or whatever, right?
They steal gold, and they have a Sherman tank, and they're going up against. He's guarded by tigers.
That was the one with James Garner, right? Where he takes his daughter and kids in the tank, and they go from state to state with the cops chasing them.
Not that one.
No,
not that one. I mix all my tank movies up.
Clint Eastwood, Don Rickles.
Don Rickles. Yeah, and that
Donald
dude
Sutherland.
and that dude from Smokey and the Bandit. He played the sheriff.
No, Jackie Gleason is not in.
Yeah.
No, he is not in Kelly
Oh.
Sarah's.
All right.
Stop listening, Sean. He's messing with you.
I know he's not. I know he is.
Colonel-
So why is that on your top 20 list? Like, what about that movie? Put it there.
As far as the World War II genre, it's just I watch it all the time. The group of characters that they bring together, the performances from all of the actors, I found this to be excellent. The pacing of the story, it's just moves along very quickly. And for that time, it was a lot of those World War II movies were very formulaic. This one was not as formulaic as a lot of the others. Another one that I might have put on that list would have been A Bridge Too Far. But A Bridge Too Far didn't make the list because it's so long.
Mm.
You know, it just drags on like, oh, we're driving up the road. We're driving up the road. It literally felt like you were trying to cross a bridge too far, although I love the film. But as far as the World War II genres, I just felt like that one needed to be on the list because it's just one of the ones that I watch over and over. And the performances from all the characters just really, they strike a really resonant note in my bolt action World War II wargaming heart.
Okay, well, I'll allow it. I have no
Okay.
objections.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, why is Phantasm on the list? Is that the animated Disney one that we're talking
No,
about?
that's Fantasia. No,
Fantasia. Okay, I was like, what? You really like Mickey? What's going on?
That's right. Mickey, you remember Mickey had the little ball that would float with the two spikes that came out and hit you in the forehead?
The director's cut of Fantasia.
So Phantasm,
Donald Duck visited Mickey. He ran a funeral home.
Phantasm is
It was
one
actually
that-
a front for aliens from another dimension. Remember? Yeah.
So Phantasm was filmed on a shoestring by a guy named Don Coscarelli, and it spawned like 5 or 6 movies. But the original, the idea of the tall man and the ball that would suck your brains out when it hits you in the head and stuff like that, I just found it to be a really interesting, and the fact that it was also not just a horror film but also a science fiction film, because you found out, spoilers, kids, that they were pushing, like they were killing people and then putting them to be slaves in another dimension, which you had through the tuning fork gate. I just found it to be a really innovative, and for the amount that they had to film it, I just found it to be an innovative and interesting movie. And as far as horror movies from that period, again, we're talking about early 80s. I found it's just got so many unique and creative touches to it that I thought it deserved to be on my list of favorite movies or movies that I like. My top 20 that I watch over and over and I really find very interesting.
Okay.
Next.
All right, Godzilla King of Monster. Go ahead, Kelly. What were you gonna say?
I appreciate sort of the eclectic nature of Rich's list. He's putting some things out there that I don't think, I didn't think of personally. But I do have to say, in some of these, even though they would be, in my estimation, a bit obscure, they were influential movies in the sort of the cinematic world.
Yeah, there's a lot of like that combination of horror and science fiction, the science fiction twist. I mean, you can even argue that people like M. Night Shyamalan took after.
No, you
things
can't.
Like that. Yeah.
No, you can't.
I do. All right, so then we have 2 giant monster movies. So I don't
Yes.
think we need to beat those over the head. Blazing Saddles, that is a classic. Why did Collateral make the list?
Collateral, that was one that I know Sean has some issues with Collateral because of the
Sean has issues with you having issues about Collateral.
But
Yeah.
I found Collateral to be one of those films. It was just very well shot. In terms of its pacing, I just found it to be very. It was concise. Like it would have hits, and the whole idea of Tom Cruise's assassin character really intrigued me. The fact that he just kind of flies in out of nowhere, and he's a nobody he's a gray man who just hits his marks and then rolls off. I didn't recall any other films before that really kind of took over that concept.
Enter the Dragon.
Enter the Dragon, yes. You know, it's arguable that John Wick developed a lot of its beats from, which is, you know, a great movie that I really enjoy, and even The Equalizer, which is also on my list, developed a lot of its beats from Collateral. I think it was a Michael Mann movie, if I remember correctly. He was the
Think so.
director.
Yes, Collateral was, yes.
Yeah, and Tom Cruise's performance in it was, I found it just to be awesome. And it was another one of those movies where he trained with guys that were really high speed, and he tried really hard to make sure that his performance was accurate in his gunplay, in his fighting, that sort of stuff. I think John Wick actually owes a lot more to Collateral than a lot of people even consider.
See, I don't know why you think I have an issue with Collateral. I
I
actually
didn't like Tom
that
Cruise.
movie. I like Collateral a lot.
I don't like
thought,
Tom Cruise.
I thought Tom Cruise did a great job in there, and his training was really good. Another
Could have used a
example
few
of-
more holsters, in my opinion, but other than that, I have no issues with the movie.
Well,
I
they had one
used,
gun.
as a matter of fact, his shooting from retention. I
Mhm.
used that as a training
Yes.
training aid all the time
the alley,
to show
yeah.
people. Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought that was
fantastic.
amazing. Yeah, really good.
Okay, that's my mistake. I thought you had an issue with it. That's just my mistake.
That's all
Um,
right. That's all right.
Yeah, but I
We
find
were
that,
listed
just
them.
ridden with them.
and you know, even Jamie Foxx, Jamie Foxx's performance in it, I thought was very well done. You know, the fact that he's pulled into a situation that he has no control over, but he eventually turns it around on the one guy that he just shouldn't try and turn it around on. But I mean, he figured, you know, he wasn't going to make it out of there anyway, so what did he have to lose? I just found the whole movie, you know, the whole idea at the end where, you know, he just dies on the train. Unfortunately, catches an unfortunate bullet, and then he ends up being exactly like he was like the coyote that was, you know, running across the road. I really like the film, and I think it's very exceptionally shot with an exceptional story and exceptional performances all around.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Okay, it seems like you're grouping some of these because we've got the two monster movies together. Now we have Collateral and The Equalizer, which in some ways are, you know, similar in style. So
Yeah, the
Now,
Equalizer. Yeah,
For
Go
the
ahead.
Equalizer, I would argue if I were going to have a movie of that ilk, let's see, Man on Fire
yeah, that
Mhm.
also was considered. I considered that one.
or Training Day.
mhm.
Yep.
But
All
those
Denzel
are, of
Washington
course,
movies.
They are.
Yeah.
Training Day, of course, is a different genre, I would
Yeah.
say. But Man on Fire, I like that one a lot. Equalizer's all right. Yeah, I'd probably have Man on Fire on mine instead, but I don't have an issue with Equalizer. I like him a lot better. He's my favorite Equalizer. As you may
Yeah.
recall, the original Equalizer was
Not good.
completely unbelievable.
No,
You know,
old fat guy.
old British
Yeah.
fat guy driving a Jaguar and somehow going out there and beating people up, which is why I think the current Equalizer, which is Queen Latifah, is
Even
That's
better.
right. I forgot about that.
Even better. Yeah,
It's
oh,
every
man.
bit as believable as Lee Van Cleef as a ninja master.
Yes. How many heart
Yeah.
attacks can I have trying to do this scene? Queen Latifah
But
will let
I
you
will
know.
say the current Equalizer, who is of course Queen Latifah, is more faithful to the original idea of the Equalizer because they're both ridiculous, and so the Equalizer movies were for me more believable that way, you know. So those as a Denzel Washington vehicle for the avenging knight, you know, that was
Yeah.
that was all right. Yeah.
Trying to right his wrongs. I mean, I found that you right other people's wrongs to alleviate his wrongs. You know, I found that to be, I just found it resonated with me, and I thought the movie was well done.
Yeah.
You know, the villain was very good. The Russian
Mhm.
monster they brought in.
Yeah.
So, you know, all of those things, it made my favorites list. What's next?
Iron Giant, utterly forgettable. I found it derivative, pedantic.
Yeah. Another Dune inspired
Yeah.
project
Rip off.
that
Mhm.
Yeah, that's one that I watch every Christmas. I find it to be a really, as far as animated films go, Brad Bird really did just outstanding work with that film. pulls on emotional heartstrings, it's still to this day for me, which I just find very, the idea of the super weapon gets bonked in the head and becomes, something more than it was created to be. The whole idea of it just really,
boy, I can relate to that.
Mm.
super weapon bonked in the head. But I found it to be, I found it to just pull in elements of all sorts of classic 1950s comics, War of the Worlds, all that sort of thing.
The only thing I didn't like about Iron Giant, the only thing that sours it for me is the fact that they turned it into a political message.
Yeah,
the
anti-war message in it. I understand that part of it. I ignore that. That it wasn't so. It wasn't so egregious.
Because I agree with you on a lot of the points you made about that movie. I wish I could ignore that. I can't tell you how many times I've watched that movie and then stopped it right at that point where it's like, you don't have to be a gun, that kind of crap.
Yeah. I see that part of it.
Yeah, but the rest of it, I agree with you.
As a
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Good old Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the better Kevin Smith's movie, and I'm a fan of Kevin Smith. I like him, but there's been a couple ones where I was like, okay, it feels like you're
his recent work
going back to that same well kind of thing. But this doesn't. This is an outlier to It's not. Yeah, like I enjoyed Dogma. It's an ensemble cast, a little irreverent. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Kevin Smith before his heart attack was much better than Kevin Smith after his heart attack. And that's just the simple truth. His first 5 or 6 films were the top of his game. And after everything he's made ever since those, I've found massive criticisms with, aside from his personal behavior, which is irrelevant to his filmmaking capabilities. He just doesn't have the same spark that he used to have. Chasing Amy and Dogma were 2 that I found where he was kind of riding the very top of the wave of his ability to push boundaries in cinema, to push boundaries in social convention, the things, and to give nods and asides to people like us, to the geeks, which is what he spawned from in the first place. He was a geek, he was a nerd, and he did not deride people like us. He exalted us, which I found to be, refreshing, because it's like Revenge of the Nerds, even though, they came out victorious, they were still, they were derided as like the worst people on earth,
That movie hasn't aged well, by the way.
No, it hasn't. I just watched both of the first 2 recently too, just to kind of
massive felonies in there.
Yes. Oh yeah. Now the people that made the movie would not be allowed, on a movie again.
No, they'd have to register on a few sites.
Yeah, they would. Yes, but as far as Kevin Smith movies, like I like you, Mark, I enjoyed his earlier work, and this and Chasing Amy were the 2 I was kind of weighing, like which one's my favorite. This one won out just because of I think it's Alan Rickman, who played Archangel Gabriel.
Yeah.
And the Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's performance I thought was really good in that one. The whole thing just kind of gelled together for me. I liked it. It was weird and quirky and unusual for films of the time.
The one that I would also put in that my personal favorite is that genre. I guess kind of that genre would be, what was it? Army of God. Was that it? The one.
Are you talking about The Prophecy?
Christopher Walken.
The Prophecy.
No, it had two titles. There was one that was done in Europe, and the one here.
Army of God in Europe and Prophecy here.
Yeah. Army of God version.
One of my favorite movies. It didn't make the list though, but it definitely is another one that I would have in, like, if I had top 30, it would be in there. It was. I've seen that movie so many times. I really.
The only reason I didn't have it in there was because I hate the trope of the most evil and maniacal and powerful weapon is some human dude who was a general or something. That's the only part I didn't dig. That and the little girl.
He was just a cannibal.
The stuff with Christopher Walken and the Angels and Viggo Mortensen and all, that was great. That was awesome.
Yeah, Viggo Mortensen's performance as Lucifer is one for the ages. It was
the whole idea of pulling somebody back from going to paradise as he's
Yeah.
pulling them back into the bodies, and they're all upset
Yes.
and crying.
Yes. Yeah, come on back. Come on
I
back.
thought that part I thought was great, and him like, just shut up, come on, I need you.
I have to say, in that film, my favorite was when he was talking to Thomas, doubting Thomas in the church, and he tells him, you know that dent you have in your upper lip.
the little,
Yeah, I told you a
Yeah.
secret and said, shh.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I
Walken's
love that.
performance in that is another one for the ages. Just really well done. But
And
Yeah,
Viggo Mortensen, I thought was excellent as
great.
Lucifer. Really good. His scene
Great.
at the end was really good.
so over the top.
Yeah, I loved it.
Mhm.
All right. Is that
Yeah,
second-
Empire Strikes Back. I think we all know why that's
Yeah.
on the list. Secondhand Lions.
Secondhand Lions. Yeah, if you guys
Yeah,
haven't seen
this one kind of came out of nowhere.
really. So anyone who has kids really should watch Secondhand Lions with them. It's Secondhand Lions is it's a story. If you're not familiar with it, it's got Michael Caine and what's the
Robert Duvall.
Robert Duvall. Yes, Michael Caine and Robert Duvall. They're brothers, and their nephew it ends up spending the summer with him. Burt Breathed of Bloom County did cartoons for the film, but it's a coming of age story. He's got a crappy mother who really doesn't care about him. The kid, so he goes to stay with his uncles, and his uncles are very eccentric, but at the same time, they've lived this amazing life of adventure, and he kind of learns all the things that he didn't learn from his mother. He learned through these two guys who were his uncles, who really didn't they didn't cotton to him, in the beginning, but by the end of the film, I mean, they leave everything to him. And it turns out that the stories that are told about them are not exaggerated. They've actually done all the things that these tall tales that people say that they did, they actually did. But just in terms of a coming of age story, some people think those kinds of stories like Stand By Me and that sort of thing. The speech that Robert Duvall gives about the things that men need to believe in, especially for young men, I think after they have the fight in the general store with the young toughs, and he gives them the speech basically about how they should behave and where they're screwing up. I find Secondhand Lions to be just an excellently done film with great messages and really well performed. And very heartwarming, a heartwarming story, even though it's at times it shouldn't be a heartwarming story, but it is. It's about a kid who kind of is unloved and finds love through two guys who don't love anybody. I just find it to be an excellent film, and especially if you have children, I just think it's one that's great for especially fathers to show their sons. I think it's just a very well done film.
all right.
So if it's for fathers to show their sons, then I have no reason watching it.
No, you don't.
Same.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. However, I can.
Yes.
So-
But yeah, it is one of my favorite films, and it's actually one of the few that I've actually purchased a copy of and given to other people.
That's right.
just-
He's given me a copy of that film.
I did.
Really?
I know.
Yeah.
I've given it away. Yeah, I've given it to other people. So I've done that a couple of times. It's one of those movies that I think a lot more people should be exposed to and should watch.
Only those who have sons. Those who don't
Not
have
just
sons.
those who have sons.
So
But
Mark,
those
give
who
your
don't have
copy to
sons
Sean.
can't partake.
No, I have a stepson now. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
No, we'll have to pick one out for you for stepson. We'll do it.
Okay. Yeah. Is there a stepson movie? Yeah.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah,
give you
Step Brother.
Robot Jocks.
Step Brothers. Did we
That's
just
what
become
Step
best friends?
Robot Jocks. There you
I'm gonna put my balls on your drum set.
And then we've got to finish the list with Rob Roy.
Yes, Rob Roy.
This was Liam Neeson just before he became a Jedi.
Yes.
Yes.
And
That's where he
what's her
learned
face?
swordplay.
A little bit
And
before.
what's her face from Tootsie? She plays the wife.
Dustin Hoffman?
No. Hold on.
No.
If only it was Dustin Hoffman in a dress.
Yeah.
Jessica
Then
Tandy.
it would have been on my top 20.
Jessica
Yeah.
Lange. So it's Liam Neeson,
Jessica
Jessica
Lange,
Lange,
that's it.
John
Yeah.
John Hurt, who plays the Lord. Tim
Yeah.
Roth is
Yeah,
Tim
Tim Roth.
Roth. There
guy.
you are.
Which
Eric
was the
Stoltz-
guy from that you couldn't remember his name
Yeah,
from the
couldn't
Hulk
remember
and
his name.
the
Tim Roth. Yeah,
Quentin Tarantino movies.
correct. Yes.
Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir
and all
Dogs.
that. Yep.
Also feels Eric Stoltz and Brian Cox, who was in other movies and Gangs of New York.
Okay.
But in terms of so there's the honor theme in Rob Roy, which it resonates deeply with me. But there's also the sword play. I found it was one of those few movies that was very realistic, because at the end, when you have the big sword fight at the end, Tim Roth is the effete, expert fencer, and Rob Roy is he's an actual fighter. So he does things that he just doesn't expect, and that's what allows him to, win the day. But it's a very well done movie. I like the pacing of it. I like the action in it, and I like the ideas that it's kind of gritty. It's a gritty film. There's some very gritty themes that I find really appealing, and it just happens to be one of my favorites. It is a very well done, for that medieval period piece. I think it was superior to Braveheart, which is a good movie, but I think this one just kind of comes off as a better film in general.
Probably more historically accurate than Braveheart.
Probably, yeah. yes, yeah, very much. Although there's many things about Braveheart that I really like.
Kilts,
Rob Roy,
yeah.
I found to be really just a good movie.
And it started a famous drink. So
It did.
there you go.
Oh, well, yes.
Mhm.
It started it, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
so
Well, like I
that's
said, on the whole, I like your whole list.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Find no fault with it at all.
Well,
There's lots of faults with it, but like I said, I thought the assignment was,
That was the
20
assignment.
movies
You've
that you
understood it
like.
correctly, which is why
Okay.
I find no faults, because they're the movies that you like and that mean something to you.
You
know,
notice how
and,
Mark
and like I said,
Mark
they're a
is-
little different. I'm glad we all don't have the same list.
Mark is changing the criteria.
I'm not changing the
fact.
criteria. You
To save
are
save-
I don't
latching
know,
on to
Mark
what you
lost
thought
his
the
face
criteria
on it,
was.
So I think he pretty much understood. He knew Lost in Space was not a great movie. He
Right,
Yeah.
right. I know it's not a great movie,
No,
you know,
no,
but
no,
but
watch
it
the
to
last
me it
podcast,
was
and
like
you'll
this
see
is
Mark's. You'll
you-
see Mark's.
no.
sitting there
You,
saying,
do you know
"Oh,
why Lost
crap,
in
I
Space
shouldn't
is on
have
there?
that on
Because it came out in a time when the
No
CGI
other
was
movies
just
were
was
good.
just coming into its own, and they're figuring it out. And this was an example of what I thought was like, okay, this is the promise of what we can now do in movies, right? It was just this action adventure kind of dumb movie, but I really enjoyed all of it, and I think the effects hold up well
Okay.
enough.
Okay, now two faults in what you said. One,
Okay.
you thought, and two,
You said Lost in Space. That's the second one.
Right, but other than that, my point stands.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not. Everyone's got their own particular taste. Like this list really kind of reflects a lot of things that I think about on a regular basis. But at the same time, it's just stuff that when these movies come on, I sit there. I don't care where I come into them. Last 10 minutes, last hour, first 5 minutes, I'll watch them. I'll sit down.
I'm gonna have to revisit Kelly's Heroes. It's been a long.
Kelly's
time
Heroes is
since
a
I've
great
seen
one,
that
man. I
Yeah.
highly recommend it. So,
And I think it's literally been since the '90s since I've seen Rob Roy.
yeah, Rob Roy.
Like
Rob
I remember
Roy
getting
does-
that at Blockbuster and seeing it, and but it's been years since I've seen that.
As,
one.
as
been a
far as
minute.
movies- as far as movies that hold up, like Rob Roy, when I first saw it, I did not have as much understanding of a lot of what they were trying to get across as I did when I saw it years later and was a little bit older and a little bit more mature. And I found it to be much more entertaining the second ride through than the first one. As far as Kelly's Heroes, yeah, it's just one of those classic, growing up with my dad, like he used to watch all these are movies that when he was a young man, they were coming out. So, I got to see a lot of them. And that was one that every time I saw it, and that one especially, like the humor in it really grew on me over the years. But Rob Roy, I think, still stands up as a story and as a film. It doesn't fall apart. Like Braveheart, you watch it and it's like, yeah, some of this, it doesn't hold up. Whereas Rob Roy really, I think, still holds up as a film. So
All right.
Okay, well done, Rich. We didn't get you your list, Kelly. We're gonna have to save that probably for the
Yep.
next episode, unless you guys want to go for 2 hours.
No,
No,
we can do
Don't need-
no, we can do we'll do another episode with that because I want to give this the proper attention that it deserves.
Mhm.
Rich, thank you for exposing yourself.
yes, sir.
And as I think your list is good. I think it's like Mark said, good favorites, that kind of thing. Definitely some stuff on there that's seminal for, various reasons. So Kelly, I look forward to yours. We'll take a look at that next time and see what seminal crap is on there as well. And
Yeah, what derivative
kind of
drivel
hot garbage-
you put
what
on our
kind of
list?
hot garbage you enjoy?
what Dune inspired what Dune inspired crap you have on there, that dross that you have, and we'll get to that next time. So thank you guys, thank you very
Sure.
much, and
Bye.
This concludes our Speak Nerd and Enter broadcast.